witnesses in Washington State this morning. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing until they come to my door and knock my door down. And they touch my fucking dog, I swear to God. Of course, I'm not going to open my door. Between the Sasha Riley testimony, between that and other things coming out now, I think Trump's going to full steam ahead on any of the psychopathic drug addicts that he can get to come after citizens that dissent, that don't agree with his America Last policies. Fucking pig. So, in secret testimony, Republicans derided Trump's stolen election claims. They did. The testimony, part of the derailed Georgia election interference case, makes clear how dismissive some senior Republicans were of claims of widespread fraud in the yeah. Let's get down to this. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina found President Trump's claims of election fraud in 2020 unnerving. Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia described Mr. Trump's efforts to get his state's lawmakers to intervene a fruitless exercise. David Ralston, a former Speaker of the Georgia House of Representatives, called the plan to create slates of fake pro-Trump electors in states he had lost the craziest thing I'd ever heard. There are transcripts of secret grand jury testimony from Georgia election interference case against Mr. Trump and his allies obtained this week by the New York Times show just how alarmed and exasperated a number of senior Republicans felt about the president's efforts to overturn an American presidential contest. The testimony given in 2022 is emerging at a time when Mr. Trump is again raising complaints about his 2020 defeat and voicing regret that he did not order the National Guard to seize the voting machines afterwards. That also said he wanted to lead a movement to ban voting machines and mail-in ballots in time for the midterms this year. Instead, he had one of his Republican donors buy Dominion voting systems. The transcripts were part of the investigative file on the case brought by Fonnie T. Willis, the district attorney in Fulton County, who obtained indictments of Mr. Trump and 18 of his allies on election interference charges in 2023. The case was dismissed in November after Ms. Willis was removed from prosecuting the case. Wrongly, in my opinion. The interviews were conducted by a special purpose grand jury that was convened in Atlanta as part of Ms. Willis's investigation. In Georgia, these kinds of grand juries are somewhat rare. Unlike ordinary grand juries, the special purpose kind does not issue indictments. Rather, they allow prosecutors to present everyday citizens with testimony and documents and receive recommendations before seeking an indictment. In this case, the special purpose grand jury recommended indicting more than twice as many Trump allies as Ms. Willis eventually charged. The skepticism that some of Mr. Trump's fellow Republicans expressed in their testimony about his claims is probably something that Georgia prosecutors would have emphasized to a trial if their case against Mr. Trump had not been derailed. An excerpt from Lindsey Graham's special grand jury interview says, "Listen, I understand all that. He thinks he's cheated out of the election. If you told him Martians came and stole votes, he'd be inclined to believe it." Senator Graham, the veteran South Carolina lawmaker, recently called Mr. Trump the greatest president of all time. But his 2022 testimony came at a time when Mr. Trump's political future was uncertain. At that time, Mr. Graham expressed exasperation over the president's baseless 2022 election fraud lies, telling the grand jurors, "I have told him more times than we can count that he fell short, and that if you told him Martians came and stole the votes, he'd be inclined to believe it." So he called the Trump campaign's plan to enlist fake electors in swing states where the president had lost the election weird. "I don't know what to tell you, just weird." He attributed Mr. Trump's 2020 defeat in Arizona not to fraud, as Mr. Trump and his allies claimed, but rather to Mr. Trump's bashing of the state's longtime Senator John McCain. Just common sense stuff like that, you dummy. Said that weakness with suburban voters had hurt Mr. Trump in a number of swing states. The McCain effect in Arizona was real, Senator Graham told the grand jurors. And when you looked at the suburbs in the states in question, you sort of had a common pattern where Mr. Trump ran behind other Republicans. I was trying to convey that to him. I'm sorry he lost, Mr. Graham added, but he lost it. Mr. Ralston, the powerful House Georgia Speaker from 2010 to 2022, testified a few months before his death. In December, the Times obtained and released a recording of a call Mr. Trump made to Mr. Ralston in late 2020, urging him to call a special session of the state legislature to overturn their election results. Mr. Ralston recounted the call in his testimony, saying that right off the bat, I got to tell him I disagree with him. I said, Mr. President, I'm sure they explained to you in two ways that we got to get a special session in Georgia, and I don't see a path forward. In addition to Mr. Trump's call to Mr. Ralston, some other details from grand jury testimony have previously been reported by the Times and other news outlets, including the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, as well as in books like Find Me the Votes by journalists Michael Isikoff and Daniel Klaidman. The Times obtained the transcripts after the judge who presided over the case, Scott McAfee, and Fulton County Superior Court lifted an order that had barred defense lawyers from disclosing much of the material that they had received as part of the discovery process. An excerpt from Brian Kemp's special grand jury interview. But on the instance of fraud, I told him, the best way to deal with that and the legal way in Georgia to deal with that is to go into a court and have a judge, show them the evidence. Mr. Kemp, now in his final years as governor because of term limits, became known for refusing to bend to Mr. Trump in the aftermath of 2020. In his testimony before the grand jury, he said Mr. Trump urged him to convene a special legislative session and to order an audit of ballot signatures. Mr. Kemp did neither. He testified that a special session would have been a distraction at the moment when Republicans needed to focus on approaching runoff elections for both the state's U.S. Senate seats. He said that seeking a change in the law in the middle of an existing election would never stand up in court and would just be a fruitless exercise. President Trump was very persistent, as you can imagine, and repeatedly asked for things. Mr. Kemp testified, and I repeatedly told him, what the law was here. Another Georgia Republican testified before the special grand jury was Chris Carr, the state attorney general, who was running for governor this year. And Mr. Carr said in testimony that a call with Mr. Trump after 2020, the president urged him to stop lobbying other state attorneys general against joining a lawsuit filed by Ken Paxton, the attorney general of Texas. An excerpt from his special grand jury testimony says, and I said, I know that that's probably not what you want to hear, but as the attorney general for Georgia, we're just not seeing the things that you're seeing. Mr. Paxton filed a suit against Georgia and 3 other swing states asking the U.S. Supreme Court to stop the 4 states from casting their electoral votes for Joseph R. Biden Jr. and to extend the deadline for certification of presidential electors. The court ultimately rejected that. Mr. Carr testified that he believed the Texas suit to be legally, factually, and constitutionally wrong, but he told the president he was not reaching out to his fellow attorneys general about the matter. In his testimony, he said he told Mr. Trump, we're not just seeing things that you're seeing. Tara Murray, a spokesman for Mr. Carr, said in a statement late Tuesday he believes the criminal case against Mr. President should never have been brought. Now he's saying he believes the criminal case against Mr. Trump shouldn't have been brought. Okay. All right. Sure. A prosecutor asked Lindsay Graham whether the president cheated at golf. Some people say you may outdrive him, but you're not going to outdrive his caddy. It is what it is, Mr. Graham said. Just another drop in the bucket of felonious bullshit coming out of this president and everything he stands for with his cheating, lying, and doing anything you can, stepping all over anybody you can, ruining anybody that you have to get more in your life. That's Donald Trump's credo. Sorry that some of our working class folks really think that he's for you. I don't even know what to say about that anymore. He needs your vote. He needs your support right now. They've invested so many billions of dollars into bot farms to try to make the American people feel like there's more MAGA than there are. You know that, right? Most of the MAGA online aren't even MAGA, they're bots. And if they are MAGA, they're probably from wherever most of those big MAGA accounts on Twitter ended up being from, huh? They're not Americans, that's for damn sure.